Welcome to another edition of Cracking the Shell on Psychological Science. I'm Mike Doherty, and today I'm here with students for my honors class. For those unfamiliar with the honors program at Maryland, I guess I can say the program consists of two major components. One component involves an extensive and rigorous program of study, so all the classes that the students have to take, and the second part involves conducting an independent research project leading to a thesis. Today, I'm going to have our students share a little bit about themselves and about the research they did for their honors thesis. But before we get started with that, how about you all take turns introducing yourselves and how you got interested in psychology in the first place?
My name is Hannah-Lise, and I'm from Salisbury, Maryland, and I first discovered I wanted to pursue a degree in psychology after taking AP Psych in high school. I really enjoyed the class, and then before college, to kind of further confirm whether I was interested, I interned at a private practice and got to do a lot of assessment and scoring work, and so that was really helpful in piquing my interest in psychology.
Okay, so your interests are they clinical psychology then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Then do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Jonathan. I'm from Burtonsville, Maryland. My interest in psychology came after I earned my associates from community college and transferred to Maryland. I'm really interested in the avenues of developmental psychology and how that intersects with clinical psychology. Hopefully one day I'd like to work with foster youth.
That's really cool. Doesn't surprise me, actually, knowing everything else you do. Why don't you go next?
My name's Eric. I'm originally from Redmond, Washington, so over on the West Coast.
Oh, really? I guess I didn't know that. Originally?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Born, raised.
All
This is
right.
my first time on the East Coast, really.
Oh, interesting.
So, I chose Maryland because DC's here.
Okay.
But yeah, I was interested in psychology mainly because I just think it's interesting. When I was a kid, I was just like, why do people think the way they do? And sort of that very cliched answer. I just wanted to know why people think the way they do and what leads people to think the way they do. And after coming to UMD,
you got the answer?
Not really, but I got more questions than answers.
Okay.
I got some answers.
That is the right answer to that question, actually. Do you want to go next?
So I'm Theron. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, and kind of like what Hannah-Lise said, my passion for psychology didn't really come until I was a junior in high school, taking AP Psych for the first time, and then just learning about all the theories and all the concepts really fascinated me. Coupled in with the personal experiences that I've had with mental health and just learning about different theories as well from outside of my classes. I just really wanted to pursue that more in college, so this is where I am, and I'm really happy to be a psych major. I'm glad I made this far.
So Hannah-Lise, I understand you worked with Dr. Andrea Cronus-Toscano. Can you share a little bit about what you did on your honors thesis with her?
So there's been a strong link between parent and child anxiety that's been supported through genetics and child rearing studies. However, the role of parental responsibility, which means how parents balance their involvement in caregiving activities in relation to this link between parent and child anxiety, has not yet been studied. So that's what my thesis was focused on. And the project was a secondary cross-sectional study that utilized baseline data from a randomized control trial comparing two treatments for behavioral inhibition. And so from the study, we found that greater co-parent anxiety was related to greater child anxiety severity, while primary parent anxiety was not related. And this was really surprising for us, given that most of the studies that have been supported with this link have been focused on primary parents who are also often mothers. And just for context, primary parents in this study were parents who were either more involved in caregiving or the ones who attended all the treatment sessions, and then co-parents were the other parent involved. And then additionally, in the study, we found that greater balance in parental responsibility, so greater balance between parents and how involved they were in caregiving responsibilities, was related to lower child anxiety severity. And so based on these study results, we think that it may be important for future studies to measure both primary parents and co-parents anxiety when examining this link between parent and child anxiety, and also to consider the degree to which parents are involved in their child's caregiving responsibilities, as this may have important implications on child anxiety for children high in behavioral inhibition.
So if you had to take one thing from that and say that you learned, what was the main message that you felt you took away from this project?
I think one of the main things I really enjoyed learning through this process was just learning how to plan a project kind of from start to finish, and being able to really seek out the literature to understand something that hasn't been studied yet with parental responsibility, and then just learning how to further my skills with statistical analyses.
Jonathan, how about you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did? Now, you worked with Dr. Tracy Riggins, right?
So my project was titled Impact of Neighborhood Environment and Prenatal Drug Exposure on Amygdala Volume in Urban Adolescents. This was something that sort of culminated off of some of the research I've been able to do before with the other opportunities we have at Maryland. And the main thing for this study was just sort of seeing how neighborhood factors interact with prenatal drug exposure to influence brain development, and then also just seeing if these neighborhood factors serve as something that's protective against the common negative effects of prenatal drug exposure. Prenatal drug exposure refers to any type of exposure to illicit substances or teratogenic substances while a child is
Can you
still
explain that
in
last
utero.
word? It was a big word. So
teratogenic?
Yeah. What?
So it kind of just basically means it's something that impacts development of the fetus, leading to the negative consequences like after birth. So it can be something like alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, opioids, and stimulants that are known to have effects on fetal development that then lead to health complications after birth. And in this case, we're looking at PDE because research has kind of shown that it's been something that leads to effects in cognitive development, cognitive ability later on in life. So there's immediate effects in early childhood, and also some things that are not apparent until later on in like later developmental stages like adolescence and early adulthood. So the main interest here was sort of seeing if these supportive neighborhood environments, or if you can measure the amount of neighborhood support, can protect against some of these negative effects that prenatal substance exposure or prenatal drug exposure has.
I think it's really kind of interesting too to think about sort of what happens before birth as having sort of these lifelong consequences. And how about we move on to Eric? I understand that you worked with Dr. Redkay. Can you share what you did with her?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in why people think what they think. So my research was about theory of mind, specifically how development of theory of mind is different between autistic and non-autistic adolescents going through puberty. And for those not in the know, theory of mind is just this concept that describes your ability to conceptualize what other people are thinking, what they might believe, what their emotions are. Like the classic examples, like when you tell a joke, you're sort of anticipating someone else is going to think it's funny because you can sort of understand what their mental state is. And a lot of research into autistic individuals has shown that they struggle more socially. They have more trouble forming friendships, keeping friendships. They report higher loneliness. And one very common theory for why they have that struggle is that their theory of mind development is different than non-autistic individuals. So I just wanted to see, like, during puberty what's going on. So I was looking specifically at, we were using implicit theory of mind tasks, so very spontaneous. So participants weren't asked in a very conscious way, like, think about what this person's thinking. Just more like, are they going to passively, during this task, note and verbalize other people's mental states? And so we were measuring that sort of aspect of theory of mind. And to cut a long story short, my general findings found that there weren't actually any differences in theory of mind development and performance during puberty between the groups, which I thought was super interesting. It sort of goes against the more commonly traditionally held notion that you would find theory of mind differences.
Now,
However,
is that because of the way you measured it, or generally, like, you don't think there's anything there? Like, because I think in your experiment, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, you used some like comedy clips or video clips?
Yes, so we used a silent clip from the movie Matilda, and then we used a Pixar short, both to measure it. And I think the strongest explanation for why we found no real difference is that the measurements we were using weren't social enough to sort of really trigger a sort of theory of mind activation that we would need to be able to capture it on paper. Some past research by Dr. Redkay has found when a participant believes they're actually talking to a real person on the other end of a task, a lot more like social networks are firing in the brain. Because they were just watching clips and the tasks I used, it's probably more likely that they just weren't feeling a social aspect of the task and therefore didn't really need theory of mind.
Cool study. You guys do some really, really amazing stuff. So, Theron, let's move on to you. You also worked with Dr. Redkay, so can you give us the little brief overview of your work?
And Dr. Redkay's lab, what I mainly did was used eye tracking glasses to analyze data, and I wanted to take that one step further. So that's kind of led to my honors thesis project, which is titled Understanding Gaze Behaviors in Adolescents with Autism and Social Anxiety. So just to provide some background information, gaze-to-face behaviors, so like the behaviors such as maintaining eye contact or just fixating on the face, are reduced in individuals with social anxiety and autism, or at least that's what research suggests. However, when we looked at previous eye tracking studies, we found that these gaze-to-face behaviors were measured when participants were looking at videos or images of other people's faces. And there hasn't been a lot of research that has analyzed how participants look at faces within a real face-to-face peer interaction. So the whole point of our study was to see how those gaze-to-face behaviors are actually exhibited within those face-to-face interactions and to see if those gaze-to-face behaviors are actually reduced. What we did was we paired adolescents to age 11 to 15 in our study, and when we paired them in, we brought them into our lab to engage in a social interaction where they were prompted to plan a 2-week vacation, so something to do while they were interacting with each other. We had 3 different pairing types. So we paired autistic and autistic teens with each other, non-autistic and non-autistic teens and non-autistic and autistic teens. And within those 3 different groups, we measured for social anxiety using a self-report questionnaire. And again, we used special eye tracking glasses that could measure how long they were looking at each other's faces for a set amount of time. And so our results found that overall autism and social anxiety status were not significant predictors of gaze-to-face behaviors. And so we kind of found that social anxiety and autism doesn't really reduce those gaze-to-face behaviors within those 2 populations, despite the graphs, at least the way they look, showing a reduction. Statistically speaking, there wasn't any significance, which I found was very interesting. And just in general, I think that eye tracking technology, with it being a relatively new piece of technology within this type of research, could be expanded upon to open up multiple clinical and research possibilities for understanding autism and social anxiety more in depth.
So you were using the new eye tracking stuff, right? Doesn't Dr. Redke have now some like glasses?
Yeah, so
right?
we have glasses that feel a lot more naturalistic to the participants. A lot of the old eye tracking studies, what they did was they had like these big clunky machines that like people would just like lay their heads on and they would like examine their gaze through that. But just having participants wear just normal glasses, or what appears to be normal glasses, I guess reduces that weird artificial feeling within our study, which I think is a big prop to our study because we try to make it as naturalistic as possible. So having those, glasses made the interaction just feel more naturalistic than more of a research setting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have one comment, or maybe one question, and that is, when you have people wear glasses, like they know you're observing their eyes, like the eye tracking glasses, right? And so it kind of makes me wonder, right, do people's behaviors change as a result of having this apparatus put on their eyes, right? Do the individuals who you thought might have had less gaze to face, could they have sort of adjusted in light of the fact that they knew that they were being observed? So before we close this out, you all are graduating this spring, so I guess it would be great to know a little bit about what your next steps are and your career goals moving forward. Jonathan, do you want to go first?
I'm actually really happy to say that I will be joining the staff at the Maryland Neuroimaging Center as a full-time MRI operator or specialist. Aside from that, my goal is to continue to pursue some research experiences and pursue graduate studies in clinical psychology.
Annalise?
I'm going to be working a postbac position at the Yale Child Study Center's Anxiety and Mood Disorders program. So I'll be working with Dr. Emily Olfson and Dr. Rebecca Etkin there. So I'm really excited to further hone in on my interest in anxiety and treatment work. And in terms of career goals, I'm really interested in family functioning and how that relates to psychopathology and treatment, and so I hope to go on to graduate studies in clinical psychology.
So do you want to be a clinician then?
I think I'm interested in a mix of research and clinical work for right now, but yes.
Yep. Eric, do you want to give it a shot?
I'll be working as a research analyst at a local consulting firm, so kind of just using all the skills I learned in the lab, like interviewing companies and people and sort of carrying that stuff on. They were really impressed that I knew R. I'll probably just be doing a lot of R coding.
Theron?
For me, I have a postbac position at Georgetown's Medical Center, where I'm going to be working in the social anxiety disorders program with Dr. Elizabeth Hoagie. There, I'll be doing a mix of both research and also actual treatment implementation. So I'm really excited to get that hands-on clinical experience as my goal. As of right now, it could change within my postbac time, but as of right now, I want to become a clinical psychologist, so having that blend of both clinical application and research application is going to be really helpful for me in the future.
So one of the great things I like about this class is that I get to interact with some really cool people, and it's just been a blast for me to have the 4 of you in class this year. And the other thing I wanted to say is, on behalf of the psychology department here at Maryland, we wish you the very best in everything you do. You'll probably cross paths with us at some point again in your future, either because we'll be coming to you with our hands out asking for a donation, or we'll be crossing paths at a conference sometime. So we hope that you can stay connected to the university. Please stay in touch.
Thank
all right.
you so much.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, our pleasure. We'll talk to you all later.